So just to give me an idea, actually I need to better understand, is there an entrepreneurship major here or not? Not yet? Coming.
There's a minor for non-majors,
Okay.
business majors, and then there's an emphasis on business majors.
Okay, cool. So how many people here are business majors? A lot of you. How many are not business majors? Okay. I was not a business major in undergrad, actually. So, and I did a minor in business, and then I went on to grad school and studied business. So those that are studying business, great. Those that aren't, that's also great. The cool thing about being an entrepreneur is that you don't have to be an expert in finance or accounting to be a great entrepreneur. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about my story, my background. I'll tell you a little bit more about this company, Cotopaxi, that I'm starting. But first I'll kind of rewind a little bit and talk a little bit about who I am. So I actually, I've started several e-commerce businesses. My first one I started when I was just out of undergrad. I studied at BYU. And I'm going to tell you a little more details about those, but I'm going to hold off on telling you too much about that right now. I love adventure. I'm an adventure-obsessed person. I've been to over 50 countries. I actually had a cool experience when I was in graduate school. I was doing a thesis on entrepreneurship in the developing world, and I went to North Korea and spent a week there, and had a pretty wild experience. Basically, when you fly into North Korea, when you get into the airport, actually, first of all, when you land, it's unlike any airport I've ever landed in. The runway is like really bumpy. It's like wavy as you're like going down this runway. So it was a great welcome. When we got into the airport, they immediately confiscate your cell phone, and if you have like a large camera, they confiscate that. You can take a point and shoot. And then they have a couple government handlers that take you and they escort you around the country for the entire time you're there. So you're never by yourself. You're not allowed to talk to people. So they took us immediately, me and 5 friends, the 6 of us went. And they took us immediately to a hotel on an island in a river. So in Pyongyang. So there's actually no getting off of this little island without them coming. So you go on this little island, you stay in the 43rd floor of this hotel, and the entire hotel is empty, except for you. Just the few tourists that are in the country. There was us, the 6 of us, and a few people from Russia and from China. And that was it. Lights out the rest of the building. And supposedly the rooms are bugged. I don't know if that's true or not. I didn't discover any. But it was a pretty incredible experience. And we weren't able to meet with any North Korean entrepreneurs, which is really what I wanted. But there really aren't many because the government controls everything. And but we were able to meet with 2 entrepreneurs in North Korea. One was a Brit and the other was a German. I actually didn't know people chose to live there that weren't North Korean, but a few people do. Of course, they had to be entrepreneurs, right? They're a little crazy. So both of them, as we met with them at the hotel because we weren't allowed to leave the hotel, but they were allowed to come. And it was crazy because both of them, I asked a question about Kim Jong-il, who was at the time in power. This is after he'd introduced his son to the world, but he hadn't died yet. And as soon as I asked a question about Kim Jong-il, both of them, like, you could see panic in their faces. One of them immediately just started, like, his head was like on a swivel. He's like looking around, and he just said, I won't speak of the dear leader. And it was scary. It was a little scary thinking that, if these guys are that scared, maybe I should be more scared to ask about him. So, but I came away really appreciating what it's like to do business in the United States and in other parts of the world that have freedom. And so, but I love adventure and I love traveling. And part of the fun thing about being an entrepreneur is that you have the opportunity to do that. Like I mentioned, I went to graduate school. I did an MBA at the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania. I also did a master's in international studies at the University of Pennsylvania, which was a great experience. And so I'm going to take you back to about the time I was your age. This is about 10 years ago. I just graduated from undergrad, and I decided I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I actually took a job right out of school working for a company that I'd done an internship with, and I found that I loved it. It was a startup. I worked for this really this great entrepreneur, phenomenal entrepreneur, a young guy in his young 30s, super inspirational. And I found that I loved, wearing a lot of different hats. As a young person in the company, I was able to have a big impact on the company, and just decided that, man, this is what I want to do. I want to work for small businesses. And after a while, I realized, man, why am I working for this guy? He's driving this awesome car. He has this beautiful home. He just has a great life. And I'm working and I was making I think I started making $36,000 a year, and then I think I got a raise to like 43. So it was like, I need to be doing this myself. I need to start something myself. So I started dabbling with a bunch of different ideas. One of the ideas I had, I grew up in Latin America. When I was 4 years old, my family moved to Latin America. And so I'd had this idea about bringing roses into the United States. I'd lived in Peru for a little while, and I'd seen they sell these big bouquets of roses for like $2, these like 2 or 3 dozen roses. And when I saw those in Peru, I was like, man, I've been getting ripped off my entire life, because in the States, like Valentine's Day or something, you're like paying like $50 or more for something like that. So, when my cousin and I were like, okay, we got to start a business together. I was like, dude, roses. We could maybe bring in some roses from Peru or from Ecuador or Colombia or something. So we're like, okay, let's start looking into it. And the more I dug into it, the more I was like, man, this is going to be tough, because roses are perishable, right? And it's like, what if it gets stuck in customs? We've never imported roses before. What if they get here a day late? What if they get here and they're just all dead? So we thought, why don't we figure out a way to test this idea before committing to an entire container from South America of roses. So we thought, okay, where can we get cheap roses? Valentine's Day was coming up. And we thought Costco. Costco's awesome. So we set up this deal where we went around to all these businesses around Utah. We went to Omniture. This is before they were bought by Adobe. We went to myfamily.com, which I think is ancestry.com now. We went to New Skin and a bunch of other companies. And we found the person in charge of HR, and we told them, hey, look, on Valentine's Day, we're going to be delivering roses to companies. And if you could just send an email out to all your employees, letting them prepay for their roses, we're going to do it for $29. And we'll just show up on Valentine's Day. That way all your employees aren't leaving early on Valentine's Day. They can just be at work, and we'll deliver them to them. And they're like, we love that idea. So they blasted everybody. So we ended up pre-selling, I can't remember how many now. I should go back and see if I can find, but it was like somewhere between 500 and 1,000 dozen roses that we'd pre-sold. And so first thing in the morning, when Costco opens on Valentine's Day, we went and bought all the roses, at 3 Costcos. We seriously just bought every single rose that was available. And so there were people that were angry at us because they came in to buy them 10 minutes after it opened, there's no roses. And but we were confident we're going to, we bought all the ones that we'd pre-sold. Plus we thought all these people, they're going to see their coworkers coming back with roses, and they're going to want to buy some too. So we started the deliveries, and we realized we're horrible delivery men. This is back in the day before I had a cell phone, which just seems crazy now, but it's true. I didn't have a cell phone. And the Omniture, I remember the Omniture guys were the last ones we delivered to, and it was 6:30. I kid you not. They were upset because they're supposed to be out on their dates with their wives, right? And they're waiting for us to deliver these roses. And so the day ended, and we realized we're in trouble. We didn't have time to be selling these roses to other people. So we had I can't remember how many. It was 100 dozen roses or more extra, sitting in the car. And so panic, struck, and it was oh no, this is not good. Every penny that we just worked for is tied up in these roses. Fortunately, Costco has a great return policy. So we ended up doing, we made a little bit of money. I'll tell you what, it wasn't worth it. And I hate roses now. So I generally don't buy roses on Valentine's Day. So anyway, that it was a great experience and a great lesson learned. And I think this is part of being an entrepreneur is experimenting with things, trying to find things that are low risk that you can do to try to learn what it's like to be an entrepreneur, what things are successful, how you can make money. Shortly after that experience, we had a few other ideas, but one of them was this idea. I was in a young men's presidency, and the young men's president worked for eBay, and so we worked with the youth every Wednesday night or something, and we were talking about eBay one night, and I was asking him, like, who are the biggest sellers on eBay? And he told me about an electronics company that sold like $14 million of electronics on eBay every year, and then he mentioned this pool table company that sold a lot of like $700,000 of pool tables every month. And like immediately, like lights went off in my head. It was like, I could do that. I guarantee I could go to China and start making pool tables. I know nothing about pool tables. I didn't even know, this is so basic, and maybe some of you don't know this either, but like underneath the felt of a pool table is slate, like this hard stone, right? I had no idea. Like I seriously knew nothing about pool tables. But it was like, I was convinced that we could go make these in China and sell them online. And so within 2 weeks, my cousin and I flew out to China, and I took my vacation time to go to China, and just told my employer I was going to go on vacation. So we flew out there, and the first factory we visited was a disaster. Stupidly, I had already given them money to start making pool tables for us, because what we did is we put up a listing on eBay and just said 10-week delivery time for a custom-made pool table. And we put a little picture up that we gotten from this factory. And we hit the listing, and it had 7 days to expire. And basically, we knew what we had already talked to the factory, so we kind of knew what we had to pay for it. We knew it was going to cost somewhere around $500. And we figured by the time we imported and ship it and everything else, we had to sell it for somewhere around $1,500. 14 something, $1,500. And so like the seventh, it's the seventh day, the auction's about to end, and it was like at $500, $600. And we're like, geez, like this is not good. And as the hours start ticking down, there's like maybe 1 hour left when it starts just all of a sudden starts climbing. And people start bidding like crazy. And it hits 1,000, hits 1,100, hits 1,200. There's like a few minutes left, and we're on pins and needles. We're at my aunt's house, like the whole family's gathered around the computer. And we're like sitting here waiting, and all of a sudden it hits 1,500, and it hits 1,600, it hits 1,700, and then it hits like 1,800 when it, like 1,864, I think was the final price. The auction ended, and we were just like, we were dancing around, we were like high-fiving everybody, and it was just like the best feeling. It was like, we have a business. So we immediately place orders with these two factories in China. We fly out, and this first factory is like, first of all, this guy picks us up at this train station. I don't know Chinese. Neither of us did. We'd never been to China. So we're sitting in this train station for like an hour. No one's picking us up. No one speaks English. Finally, this little guy runs up with a sign, and he's like, has my name on it. It's like, yes, you're the guy. And I start talking to him, and then I realize he doesn't speak anything. He doesn't understand what I'm saying. And like typing, I don't know. Google Translate didn't exist back then, so I don't know how he was doing it, but he was typing in English. But when I spoke, he didn't understand what I was saying. I could not understand anything he said. But we hop in this ratty little taxi. We drive for an hour or so to this factory, and it was bad. Like we open up, there's like dogs kind of running around, and there's like dirt floors, and some guys sitting on stools carving the legs, and we're just like, this isn't good. Like, how are we going to make these pool tables? Like, we've already given this guy the money. We were there for like an hour, and it was like, all right, peace out. Like, we're out of here. Like, we can't even communicate. Best of luck. Keep making the pool tables because we need them. We've already sold them. We were starting to sell them like every day at that point. So then my cousin was like, I'd lived internationally, but my cousin had not. And so he was just like, dude, I don't think, like the other factory was in this little tiny town. This was in a big city called Guangzhou, like millions and millions of people, this first factory. The second factory is like, dude, I'm not going because if this is what this one looks like, the next one, it's even going to be worse. And it's far enough away that we have to spend the night there. So he convinced me to go to this hotel. We get this hotel in Guangzhou, and he goes and we're like totally jet lagged. So he like goes and crashes on the bed. I go down to like the main lobby to like use the phone, and like I try to call this Chinese factory, this other factory, to tell them like, hey, guess what? We don't want to come today after all, so don't pick us up because we're gonna stay here the night. Why don't you come first thing in the morning? And I was trying to convince my cousin, hey, we have to at least go. And but I called this guy, and he immediately starts speaking great English. And it was like, dude, that's a change. Like, that's a good sign. And he's like, oh, it's too late to change because our driver's almost there already. So I told him, okay, well, we're at this hotel. I went upstairs and woke up my cousin. I was like, dude, bad news. They're going to be here. And we're bracing ourselves, right? We're going to this little rural town in the middle of China. We're nervous about it. And the hotel lobby, calls and says, oh, someone's here. We walk out. There's this chauffeured Benz. And we're like, yeah, what's up? This is awesome. This is so much better than the last one. We're high-fiving each other. And we go to this factory, and it's awesome. It's they actually have some machines and stuff, carving stuff, instead of just people. And it was okay, we're, this is a business. We're going to be able to do something here. So we went back to the States, and I quit my job, and we started selling a lot of pool tables. And so we ended up doing $1 million in sales our first year. And we didn't raise venture capital. All we did is I borrowed I think I borrowed $50,000 from my grandma, and I put a bunch of money on some credit cards. I had no debt when I finished school. I'd say I was very risk averse in that sense. I always worked hard, saved money. I had some money saved up. I used all that money, got some these Discover credit cards that you get 12 months with no interest or something. You could write a check. That's what we did. And I was nervous because I was not a huge risk taker, but I really felt confident that we were going to be able to make this business work. And so over 6 years, we ended up building what became the largest retailer of pool tables in the U.S. And so we had stores in New Jersey, in Georgia, and eventually in Oregon as well. And we had just a really great experience. And right around the time that the economy kind of collapsed, this is 2008, we decided, hey, our sales, instead of doubling or tripling every year, started to flatline. And I was like, look, who knows how long this recession is going to last? The business is doing great, but maybe it's time for us to go take a break and do something different, trying to move our chips to another table. So we decided to apply to business school. And so I went to Wharton, my cousin went to Harvard, and we decided that we were going to take a 2-year sabbatical and go back to school and see if we could learn something from the experience that we had, kind of take a step away from it and maybe do something new. So we ended up selling the business and kind of burned the ships and said, okay, we're gonna figure out what's next. And people thought we were crazy. All of our friends and family, our entrepreneur friends, were just like, you're doing this backwards. You're supposed to drop out of school to go start a business, not drop out of the business to go back to school. And so, but we really believed that we would be able to do something special. So started school in 2009, and we spent the first year just brainstorming ideas. And we wanted to be very disciplined. So this is one of the keys for you guys. If you guys are thinking about starting a business, this is really, really important. Do not jump into your first idea, committed 100%. Take the time and be very disciplined to think of as many ideas as possible. Here's a quick example. If we were going to look at this room and say, okay, who's the tallest person in this room? Okay, someone over here, I guess. How tall are you? 6'5". That's pretty tall. So, are you the tallest person at UVU campus? Probably not, but close, maybe. In Utah? No. In the United States, absolutely not. So, so this is the idea. When you come up with business ideas, if you come up with 5 ideas or 2 ideas, the chances of one of those ideas being the best idea is not that high. But if you can think of 20 or 30 or 50 or 100 ideas, the chances of one of those ideas being incredible is very high. So that's what we did. The first year in school, we came up with 60 ideas that we thought were good. We went out to Silicon Valley between the first and second year of business school, and we just went through all these ideas. And by the end of the summer, we came back with one idea. The idea that we felt was the best idea of the 60 that we were confident was going to change the world. And the idea was basically going and launching an e-commerce business in Brazil, in the baby space. Neither of us had ever lived in Brazil. We didn't speak Portuguese, but I had lived in Latin America, so I felt comfortable enough. But we really just believed this was the best place for us to be. 200 million people, huge emerging economy, a huge emerging middle class. They're all getting online at this time in 2009, 2010. And the first thing you do when you get online is you want to buy stuff, right? You want to see if the internet works. Click on something and see if something shows up at your house. And so we started selling baby products. And so we started raising money. And we basically went and raised $4.5 million with a PowerPoint presentation. And the two of us that had never been to Brazil. We had no team, nothing. We didn't have a website. And so, but people believed in this vision that we had for this space in Brazil. And we moved down there, and within 18 months, we were valued at over $100 million business. And so just crazy, crazy growth story. We timed the market perfectly, and we kind of rode this rising wave. And we did a good job executing. We put together a fantastic team, people that had built e-commerce businesses before. Shipping in Brazil is complicated. You know, we'd ship 1,000-pound pool tables all around the U.S. We felt like we could do it, but why experiment? You know, we could hire someone that could do that. So we went and hired the director of logistics from Walmart. We hired people from Nike. We hired people from Google. We went and put together the best possible team that we could. And our first month after we launched, we actually got a huge celebrity in Brazil. Does anyone here Brazilian? No. Okay. You live there? Okay. So there's probably a few of you that have lived there. There's a famous couple there that you may or may not know unless you're Brazilian. But the couple is Luciano Huck is the man. He runs like a super famous TV show, and his wife is Angelica. And these two are like the powerhouse couple. They're like Angelina Jolie and Brad Pitt, but with no baggage. Okay, so like awesome couple, and they've got her husband's got like something like 14 million Facebook fans, more Twitter followers than the New York Times. I mean, just a crazy couple. And we had her join the team as our CMO, our Chief Mommy Officer. She was the face of the company. And so we did this huge media event where we had every news station, every magazine, every radio station, everyone, newspapers, all at this event. And she announced this partnership that she was joining our team, and they loved it. And so we were like on the cover of this huge business magazine. It was just like, it was insanity. And and it cost us, we gave low single digits of equity to her. We didn't pay her anything. We just gave her a little piece of the company, and we gave her the option in the next round to invest in the company, which they chose to do. So we actually got paid by her for her to join the team. And so we ended up raising a little over $40 million for the business, and just had this really fun story. We also launched a business a few months later called Jinda.com.br, and Jinda is slightly different business model. I won't go into it, but for anyone that knows Zulily, it's basically like Zulily in Brazil. And Jinda actually ended up being, or has ended up being, the better business of the two. Both are phenomenal, but Jinda has outpaced the growth, and the margins are much better. So I think the key, what we kind of learned here was that building a great team matters. We learned the power of celebrity, and we also, and that you could do it very inexpensively. It didn't cost us a bunch of money to get the celebrity on board. And we also found that sometimes it's good to, you need to be very focused as an entrepreneur, but you also can't look past other opportunities. So we saw this opportunity with Jinda. It would have been very easy to kind of push to the side. In fact, some of our investors didn't want us to do this. Most of them didn't want us to do it. They felt like we were going to be distracted. But ultimately, it ended up being a great decision for us to launch the second brand pretty soon after we launched the first. So, how much time do I have till? Okay, I'll leave a little bit of time for Q&A, hopefully, as well. So, a number of months ago, I decided it was time for me to look for my next project. I was ready to do something different. And, having grown up in Latin America, I've always had a really strong interest in having a social impact and doing good. And I always thought it was interesting that as people, as humans, we understand that making money isn't the most important thing in life. That, we all try to balance our lives. We try to spend time with family. We try to do things that we, do sports or things that we enjoy doing. We try to serve and build up our communities. But business, your only focus is making money. It's just increase the bottom line. And you, as the founder of a company, as a CEO, you're responsible for maximizing shareholder value. So you have to just increase profits, and that's your sole focus. And I just don't like that. I mean, of course, the business needs to make money. But I think that you should have the ability to do good as well. That just like we live our personal lives, we should be able to do things around help focus on people and on planet as well. So I decided to come back to the States, and I wasn't totally sure what I was going to do, but then I came up with an idea that I felt perfectly matched my interests, which was I'm starting a business called Cotopaxi. It's an outdoor gear and apparel company, but that has a social mission behind it. And so we're basically going to be selling, we're not going to sell to REI stores. We're going to be selling direct to consumer, so online, which means that we have better margins, and also the prices end up being lower for the consumer. Because instead of us having to sell a product to REI or to a retail store and them having to mark it up again, we can just sell directly to the consumer. I took this picture. This is in Bolivia, and these are the type of people we're going to be helping. And so we have all of our gear raises money for a specific cause. So we have a pack called the Kilimanjaro that's going to be raising money for a little orphanage in Tanzania that was started by a mountaineer friend of mine. This guy is not a rich guy, but he spent his life savings to buy some land in Tanzania, and he takes people on guides around the world hiking up mountains. So he'd take people to go climb Kilimanjaro, and he'd then go to this land that he'd bought, and they'd go spend a day building this orphanage. And it took 4 years to build this orphanage. But they opened it last year, and they have 15 little kids in this orphanage. And he spends $2,000 a month out of his own pocket to run this orphanage. And he does a little fundraiser with his friends once a year to help raise money for it. And so we're going to have a pack called the Kilimanjaro, and we're going to raise money for that cause. And so this is one of our packs. We have some lifestyle packs like this that you'd see around college campus or people going to the airport or something. Then we have some technical packs, ones that you take on like a full feature 65-liter technical pack that you take mountaineering or camping for several days at a time. We also have a pack that we're going to be launching that raises money for a cause that I particularly care about. When I was in undergrad, I did an internship in Peru. So my wife and I met in undergrad. We got married in school. And having lived in Latin America, I wanted to have a cool adventure together. I wanted to do something fun. And so we started looking at internships, and I found this awesome internship for a nonprofit in Peru. The problem was that it was unpaid, but we decided that it was worth doing. So we went to Peru, and we had this really incredible experience there. We lived in Lima. And towards the end of the time there, we decided, hey, you know what? We should go to Cusco. We should go to Machu Picchu. Has anyone here been to Machu Picchu? A couple people. All right. Okay, guys, this is on the bucket list. Okay, this is like one of those places you have to go at least once in your life. So my wife and I flew into a city called Cusco, which is right next to Machu Picchu, and it is a magical place. There's Incan ruins around every corner. It is the longest continuously inhabited city in the Americas. And so when we got there, we're like, oh my gosh, this is just unbelievably beautiful. So we immediately went to the main plaza in the center of this city, and we went and bought some food. And instead of sitting in the hotel, we actually decided, let's go eat our meal in the plaza. So we went and sat down on this bench in the main plaza, and immediately a bunch of little kids kind of ran up to us. And they tried to sell us postcards, and they wanted to shine my tennis shoes, and just a bunch of cute little kids. And having grown up in Latin America, I immediately connected with these little kids, and it was awesome. And after a little while, they all kind of ran off, but there was one little kid that just kind of hung around, and he had his little shoe shining kit, and he had this cute little outfit on that he wore every day. We'd see him every day, and He had a little hole in his bum right here with no underwear on. Just the cutest little kid. And he had his little shoe shiny kid always, but he just started hanging around us. And I immediately recognized that he might be hungry, so I offered him the rest of my food, and he devoured it. And so reality kind of struck, where it was like, wow, these aren't just kids that are hanging out for fun. I mean, they're working because they have to. And we decided that, we were poor. I mean, we were just married. We were broke. But we were like, you know what? Let's help this little kid. So every time we bought a meal, we'd buy a little extra food, and we'd go look for this little boy. His name was Edgar. And it was the highlight of our day. Every time we found it was the highlight of our day. And it meant, we could tell it meant a lot to him. Every time we'd see him, the reaction we got from him was the kind of thing that just made you want to do it again, made you want to do more. And he'd always take the food and he'd run back and share it with his little friends. And, it's funny because we went to Cusco to go see Machu Picchu, one of the most beautiful places in the world. But it's this memory of Edgar that has dominated my thoughts over the years. And I've thought of him more than I've ever thought of Machu Picchu. And there's one memory that kind of sticks with me, and that's our last night in Peru, in Cusco. We were walking back to our hotel. It was late at night. It was like 11 or 11:30, and it was cold. You could see your breath in the air. And as we were about to walk into our hotel room, my wife, Angeline, looked across the street and saw two little boys cuddled against each other on the side of the street. And she immediately recognized one of them as Edgar. And at first I didn't want it to be true. I didn't recognize him immediately. So I started to walk across the street, and then I saw his clothing and I knew it was him. And as I approached him, he woke up, and I started talking to him, and I asked him why he was sleeping on the street. I knew a little bit about his family just from getting to know him. I knew his mom washed clothes to make money. I knew he had some other siblings, and I knew he had a dad. And he told me that earlier that day someone had stolen his shoe shiny kit, and that he was too afraid to go home and confront his father, knowing that he'd lost his most valuable possession, the tool that helped him provide for his family. And it was heartbreaking, seeing a little boy going through this and sleeping in what was really miserable. It was not the kind of thing you would want to sleep in. And we gave him a little bit of money that we had, and he immediately kind of lit up and ran off, and we hoped that he'd be okay. And the next day, as we were sitting on a bus in the main plaza to go back, heading back to the airport. And as we sat on this bus, we looked out the window and we saw little Edgar running towards the bus. And he'd seen us through the window, and he was so happy to see us. And we had just enough time to open up this window and wave goodbye to Edgar. And he kind of ran next to the bus, waving to us, and he waved with one hand. In the other hand, he had this big bag of candy that he was now selling on the streets to make money. So he'd used our money to go buy this candy. And I've been telling this story for years, ever since it happened. It's been the story, the kind of thing that really impacts you, that changes you. And my wife the last year, she started telling me, Davis, you should go try to look through our old pictures and see if you can't see if we had a picture of Edgar. And we were in Brazil, but when we moved back to the States, I went through our storage, found all these pictures, went through, nothing, couldn't find anything. And I was kind of disappointed because I kind of hoped that I'd be able to find a picture, because I thought I remembered what he looked like, but after, this is in 2001, so, it's been a long time. It's the kind of thing where it's like, I could never really know what he looks like. I could never go back and try to find him. And I was really disappointed, and I just started working again, and my wife started going through some old DVDs, like these little mini DVDs that, you used to have in the early 2000s. We had this little camcorder, and she started going through it, and as she's going through it, all of a sudden, she stumbles upon 18 seconds of video. I'm not going to show you the video, but this is the moment when we started driving away in the bus. And we have a little picture of Edgar, and this business, Cotopaxi, is about Edgar. It's about telling his story. And it's about telling the story of millions of other children that, just like him, live a life of misery because of where they were born geographically. It's not that they don't work hard. These guys work hard, trust me. They just live in the wrong place. And we're going to change that. And so we have a PAC called the Cusco that is going to raise money for a little school in Cusco, Peru that helps street children. It gives them one warm meal a day, and their mission is to help these children realize they have self-worth. And they have little workshops teaching them English, teaching them art or music, teaching them how to make leather products, just little skills that can help them develop self-esteem, that can maybe give them some skills that can help them get out of poverty. So that's what I'm working on now. A year and a half ago, I went to Norway, and I love traveling. I've lived most of my life in Latin America, and trust me, I don't fit in. When I walk around, I don't fit in. When I'm on the airplane, whenever I get off the plane, the flight attendants are speaking Spanish or Portuguese to everyone that gets off, except for me. Then they speak English, and I've always kind of felt like, man, why don't they speak to me in Spanish or Portuguese? Like I've spoken Spanish my entire life. I speak Spanish as well as I speak English. Like, why aren't they speaking to me in Spanish? Well, I flew to Norway. I'd never been to Norway, but I have some Norwegian ancestry. And I'm on the plane, and as I'm getting off, I hear the flight attendant speaking to everyone in English until they saw me, and they spoke to me in Norwegian. And I was like, yes, I love this. I finally fit in, even though I don't understand what they said to me. But I really kind of got into, I went and visited some museums and stuff that have these old Viking ships and stuff. And I was just blown away, just really fascinated by these Vikings, these entrepreneurs, of the Middle Ages, these guys that went and explored and discovered. They're actually the ones that discovered the Americas long before Christopher Columbus. They disrupted Europe, through trade, through commerce, through pillaging. And, but these guys developed these ships that they could cross the ocean with, and they could cross the open seas, but they could also take that same ship up a river. They could take the sail down, they didn't need wind. They'd go up a river, they could raid a city, jump back in the boat and be off, and no one could catch them. And so, super great innovators. And I started, reading more about these discoverers and adventures, and I came across a really cool story. Fast forward hundreds of years to the winter of 1911 and 1912, so almost a little over 100 years ago. There are still places in the world that no one had been to, including the South Pole. And so we have this gentleman right here on the right. His name is Robert Falcon Scott, Captain Robert Falcon Scott from England. He was a British Navy captain, and he decided, I want to go to the South Pole. And I want to be the first human to ever reach the South Pole. And so it took years of preparation, but him and his team decided to start going there. And over this winter of 1911, 1912, you can see this picture that was taken of Captain Scott and his team. There was a team of 5 and this picture is taken there at the South Pole. And this is from his journal. The worst has happened. All the daydreams must go. Great God, this is an awful place. Why would he say that? Why would he say this is an awful place? Why would he say the dreams? Why would he say that? Does anyone know? What flag is on the top of that tent? That's a Norwegian flag. That's not a British flag. Someone beat him there. 30 days before he got there, a Norwegian team, this team, beat him there. Sadly, we don't know a whole lot about Scott and his team because they all died on the way back. They all froze to death. Okay? And Roald Amundsen and his team survived. They made it back. They got there incredibly quickly. And this is what he talks about. He says, I may say that this is the greatest factor, the way in which every difficulty is foreseen and precautions taken for meeting or avoiding it. Victory awaits him who has everything in order. Luck, people call it. Defeat is certain for him who has neglected to take the necessary precautions in time. This is called bad luck. Basically, Captain Scott did not prepare well. Amundsen had spent a lifetime living in the Arctic regions of the world. He'd spent over a decade he went and spent several years living with Eskimos, learning how to use furs as clothing, learning how to drive dog sleds, and learning, he spent his entire life learning how to ski. And Captain Scott and his team, they didn't even bring enough skis for their entire team because they didn't really believe in skis. Instead of, Amundsen and his team had 53 dogs that they started with, understanding that the weakest dogs they could kill and feed to the other dogs. And so when they finished, they had 11 dogs that survived this entire thing. And Captain Scott and his team, they had like 23 ponies. Well, ponies aren't made to be in Antarctica. They immediately died, froze to death because they sweat. Dogs don't sweat. They sweat. They died immediately. They froze to death. A few of them fell into the ocean, like when they're trying to unload them. They also bought 3 motor sledges, the first snowmobiles, basically. One of them, as they were unloading off the boat, fell into the ocean and sunk. Those 3 motor sledges cost something like 7 times more than all of the ponies and all of the dogs put together. So these guys had significantly more money than Amundsen, but they were not well prepared. Really quick, you can see Amundsen and his team. They had these dog sleds. These guys were pushing and pulling the sleds by hand, man-hauling. You can also see the Norwegians had these crates that they stacked up neatly, that they had all their stuff in. It was really easy to unload and load things up very quickly. Whereas Scott and his team, they just had everything bundled on top and tied down, so they ended up losing things and things were falling off. Also, Scott and his team, they were doing land surveying. They were taking lots of pictures. They didn't have a clear focus. Where Amundsen, they had one clear mission. They took 3 photographs the entire trip. Their mission was to get to the South Pole and get back alive. So this is for you guys to start thinking about. How can you be like Amundsen? What can you do now to start preparing for that adventure, for the adventure of becoming an entrepreneur? You need to spend the time and resources and energy and mental thought preparing, thinking about how you're going to be doing this. Being a great entrepreneur is not about taking huge risks. It's about figuring out how to be interested enough in taking, you need to be able to take some risks, but you also need to be risk averse that you can take thought and planning into consideration as you're launching this business. So, I really appreciate the time to be here. Also, keep an eye out for Cotopaxi. I need your guys' help. We're going to be the next Patagonia or the next The North Face. I guarantee it. We have this really cool brand. We have designers from the North Face, from Nike, from Black Diamond and Gregory that have joined the team. We have an incredible team, and we're going to be launching in April with this huge, amazing race type of event called the Cotopaxi Challenge. So we're going to be sending people to Machu Picchu in Peru. The winners are going to go to Machu Picchu in Peru. Another winning team is going to go to Angkor Wat in Cambodia. And another team is going to go to Kilimanjaro in Africa. And you can form teams of 2 to 4 people. And you basically have 24 hours to go rack up as many points as possible. Take a selfie with a llama, climb a peak above 10,000 feet, go jump in the Great Salt Lake or Utah Lake, do a polar bear swim, milk a mammal that's not a human. So you can just rack up points from doing all these different little micro adventures, right? But keep an eye out. We're going to be announcing that soon. You guys are the first group I've told about it, but it's going to be happening in April. So start talking about it. Get ready for it. Follow us on Facebook. It's going to be an awesome company, an awesome launch event. So, and we're going to have a huge band there. I'm not going to tell you who it is, but it's going to be someone you guys know at the finale. Okay. So, Q&A. I think we only have time for maybe 1 or 2 questions. I'll stick around after, though.
Did you do the other retailers all like this year?
I went, but we didn't show anything, no. Yeah, maybe this summer. Yeah.
Mine's like a 2-part question, but did you sell Baby.com and Agenda? Did you sell that company?
Not yet. Yeah, it's still being run. My cousin is running it now, and it'll happen. Yeah.
So this new company that you're starting, is it 100% of the proceeds go?
No, we're donating 10% of profits go to these causes.
Okay.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, if we have to be, a business has to run, right?
That's what I was
Yeah, so I mean, 10% is about as generous as any company's ever done. And we're actually going to do more than 10%, but 10% is kind of the baseline. But obviously, we need to be able to run a sustainable business to be able to have a positive impact. So, but this isn't about the money. It's about, for me, this is all about having a positive impact on people. So, yeah.
So what prepared you more to be a successful businessman? That experience of business or the schooling and
Yeah, so I'd definitely say experience is incredible, but you know, it helps to have a great education. That's why I went back to school. It helps to have people that are different than you, that you're surrounded with, that you can talk about your ideas. The more you talk about your ideas, the better. I know that your tendency as a first-time entrepreneur is to not tell people your ideas because you think people are going to steal them. I hear that all the time. Tell everyone. The more people you tell, the better. You're going to get feedback. No one's going to steal your idea. You know, entrepreneurs always think their idea is better than everyone else thinks it is. So, you know, no one's going to steal it. So this is the perfect time. College is the perfect time to launch a business. You have nothing to lose. Trust me, I know you're all broke. You know, you're not going to lose anything tremendous if you start something that doesn't work. So as you get older, it gets harder. So this is the perfect time to launch something. Yeah. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.